This is brutally honest advice for men to win in their 30s. I made my first $1 million at 21 years old. Then I lost it all at 23. Then I made it all back again. By 35, I was netting over $1 million a year, and real estate was the main income generator that got me there. Today, I'm going to share with you my roadmap for the things that I learned along the way. If you're in your 20s, you traded energy for experience, and now you have that experience and you've got the skills that you can benefit of being in your 30s. The 30s are not a reset, they're a redeployment. You've got the same hunger that you had in your 20s, but you've got better tools, you've got more focus, and most importantly, you know what works and what does not work. In 20s, you're still kind of trying to figure things out. You're stumbling. Maybe you don't know exactly who you are or what you're doing, and so you've got that identity crisis going on. But by the time you get in your 30s, you've kind of got things figured out on what you want and how to get there. And so 30s become pretty awesome. You know what the wrong paths look like because you've probably walked down them in your 20s, and the knowledge that you've got is worth a lot more than you think. So let's unpack some of that knowledge in this video. Your experience is now your leverage. That's the first point I want to give you. The simple rule is what got you into your 30s is reps and experience, and you've got that now. You've been bad at things and you survive those things. That's that rep count that most 20-year-olds are missing. They don't have that experience. They're brand new, and so they make lots of mistakes. But your 20s are all about gaining experience, figuring out what doesn't work just as much as what does work. And the people that I meet and that I talk to that are still trying to figure out who they are in their 20s and what they want to be when they grow up, those people tend to do really well in their 30s if they get clarity in their 20s on where they want to be at and how they're going to get there. So in your 20s, it's hard to be wildly successful. You just don't have enough experience. You don't have enough time to really break through. 10 years is actually a very short period of time. And oftentimes people actually don't get started in the business they're going to be in until they're in their mid 20s. So you're talking about a very, very condensed period of time to find success. And we know about the 10,000 hour rule. It takes 10,000 hours to get decently good at anything. It takes a lot longer than that to become a master at what you're doing. And it just takes time. Time compounds over a period of, 5 to 10 years. And eventually, all of a sudden, all this effort you've been putting in, all these skills you've been working to develop, they start to kind of pay off for you. So by the time you get into your 30s, you know who you are, you know what you want, which is really important. A lot of people don't know what they want, and you at least have an idea of how you're going to get it. The mistakes that you have made, I want you to look at those mistakes as data points, okay? When we look at them and we strip back the emotion of the shame of making mistakes, and we just look at mistakes and we evaluate them from data points and data sets, we can now be very objective and we can learn from those mistakes. A lot of people can't do that. They're very embarrassed about mistakes they've made. They don't want to own those mistakes. And so that keeps them from actually learning from those, and they end up repeating them. They kind of run in this big circular fashion where they repeat the same mistakes every couple of years because they never took the time to reflect on it. They never took the time to think through it. They never took the time to own it and learn from it. There's plenty of mistakes that I made in my 20s. Like I said, when I was 23 years old, I lost $7 million. It was during the Great Recession of 2008. It was in real estate development. That's how I got started in real estate. It wasn't actually in real estate sales. It was in building and development with my dad, who'd been a builder my entire life. And I lost it all, totally wiped out. It was totally sucked. We had my wife was pregnant. We had a baby on the way. We just gotten married. It was I was 23 years old. It was super crappy. So $7 million was gone in less than 1 year. But I learned a lot more from that failure than all of the success that led up to it. All the success that led up to it kind of blinded me to the lessons I need to learn to sustain that level of wealth. And the next 10 years really put me on a trajectory of learning what does it take to not only make this money, but what does it take to become a good steward of it and continue to grow it. Leverage and being over leveraged is obviously a very big problem. That was a big problem for me in 2008. And then of course, scaling and deploying systems and processes was really important to learn as well. When I look back, I'm like, hey, I should have had less leverage. I should have had more cash on hand instead of just equity. Equity doesn't convert into liquidity when there's a crisis. And I should have had better defined systems and processes. So along with that, I learned crisis management within an organization. What do you do when the world is collapsing? The Great Recession is considered a once every 100 years kind of event, but those kind of events have a way of happening a lot more frequently than we would like. So that every 100-year event could easily happen again next year very easily, and we have to be ready for that. The ability to manage an organization and get an organization through a crisis like that is a real skill. It's something I learned doing it the hard way. So cash management, I learned, of course, when banks were getting closed every single Friday by the FDIC, we had to reshuffle all of our lending and our construction loans and everything else. That was extremely complicated. started. And then of course we had real estate sales going on where we were selling all the homes we were building or trying to sell those homes we were building as the market was freezing over and inventory was going up across the nation. All of this like just chaos, that in the moment sucked so bad and was so miserable. Like it literally felt like hell. At the end of it, when I look back now, I'm 41 years old. When I look back at the 23-year-old Mike, I see, okay, this is actually where the foundation of learning started. It didn't start on making that money. It started on losing that money and learning what to do differently the next time, okay? But again, to do this, you have to put your ego aside, which a lot of guys cannot do. And you have to take the time to slow down, recalibrate, reflect, and think about what would I do differently next time. If you can do that, you're going to keep from repeating the same mistakes, okay? So number 2 is be ready to make real sacrifices. It takes a lot of time and energy and just sacrifices to actually become rich and make over $1 million a year. Like, I'm not even sure that I would consider that rich, but obviously $1 million a year in net income is a pretty solid income, puts you in the top 1% of people. So that's kind of the framework we're talking about today is how do you net more than $1 million a year? And this is that, be ready to give up your time when you are starting. You can buy back your time later on, but when you're first getting going, and you haven't even hit that $1 million a year yet, it's going to feel like real sacrifice. I'm talking nights, I'm talking weekends. I've missed lots of our kids' birthdays because I was busy working, but that was just the reality of building something. And the reality is that winning at a huge level is not found in balance. It's found in working your ass off. When you go to Instagram is all about talking about work-life balance, all this harmony and all this bullshit. And that sounds really cool, but that's being pushed out by influencers that haven't actually made any real money. It's being pushed on you by people that haven't been there. They haven't walked in those shoes. So they don't have any experience of what it actually takes in the trenches of business to become rich, to make that $1 million a year and actually build something that's special. But it's going to cost you time, lots and lots of your time, especially up front. Balance will be earned later on once you have millions of dollars in net worth, but are you truly willing to work nights and weekends and holidays? I have sold homes on Thanksgiving Day. I've sold them on Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, and I've taken client calls every possible hour of the day you could imagine. That's just what it costs to get to where I am at. That was a sacrifice I was willing to make. It was the cost of admission, the barrier to entry, okay? So are you ready to give up your social life to dominate in business? And it's okay if you're not. You just have to be upfront and honest with yourself. You can't say from one side of your mouth, I want to be rich, make $1 million a year or more, but I want to work 15 hours a week. Those two things do not work in harmony together. Those are completely opposite statements, okay? Yes, you could eventually get a business to a point where you make $1 million working 15 hours a week. Is it going to happen overnight? No, it's going to happen in like 10 or 15 years if you are lucky and if you work your ass off. But are you really willing to give up your social life to dominate in business? And so layering on top of that is how you manage your money as well. How you manage money is very, very important to actually becoming rich and sustaining that wealth. Again, it's one thing to make the money. It's another thing to keep the money and actually grow it and be a steward of it. So the basic theme is make more than you spend, and of course have a budget that you actually live on personally and within your business. We use Monarch. It makes it super easy to manage our money personally. We use QuickBooks in the business, and we look at those financials all the time. Like those are like really the compass for us on decision making and making sure that we're making the right decisions and spending money on the right things and that we're holding every single dollar that are accountable. But I know multiple people in real estate that make 7 figures annually, like net. They're doing very, very well, but they are dead broke because they scaled their lifestyle to match their income. They've got that Lamborghini that's got a $4,000 a month payment on it. They've got the house that's got a $25,000 a month payment on it, and they're making great money, but it comes in one pocket and it goes right out the other. Okay. So what about if you're starting out? Like if you've got less than $100,000, here's kind of a framework to start amassing wealth a lot faster by controlling what you spend. The first thing, you're no longer eating out if you're making less than $100,000 a year. You can't afford that. That's something that should come later on. You're eating at home. You're not taking expensive trips either. You're not going to Europe. It's local cheap getaways, Airbnbs every 90 days, 3 or 4 days. You're not taking the 2 weeks off. You haven't earned it yet. You're not buying new clothes either. Clothes are expensive. You're not going to spend $300, $400, $500 a month on new clothes. Agents tend to spend lots of money on clothes, and it's one of the reasons they have no money. You're also not buying a new car. I'm a fan of Teslas because you don't have a gas bill. You can go buy a Model 3 car for like $35,000 and have no gas bill. It's a great investment, but you're not buying a brand new one. You're buying one that's like 2 or 3 years old. That gets me to point number 3. There's 2 solves for every single man in every single situation. I'm just going to simplify this for you. Okay. Those 2 solves: get in shape and make money. You are still going to have problems if you do these 2 things, but they will be so much smaller, and you're going to have the resources, both mentally, physically, and financially, to deal with them. them. Okay. So let's talk about having a 6-pack at 35 years old. I'm not talking a 6-pack of beer. I'm talking a 6-pack of abs. Okay. And there is approximately 1 man out of every 25,000 men that actually has that. So it's pretty elite. It's pretty hard to get, even though it's fully within your control. People aren't willing to sacrifice to get it. And then making $1 million a year or more. 1 in 285 people do this. Okay. So if you put these two together, if you have abs and you make $1 million a year or more, you're 1 in 7 million. Okay. That's pretty wild and crazy, but you can have the money and you can still be totally miserable. You can have the abs and health and be dead ass broke. When you have both, you are the unicorn and you can truly conquer anything. That is like the cheat code to massive success. Don't abandon your health. Don't abandon what you're doing with wealth. You need to have both. If you do that, you're that 1 in 7 million people that are totally going to win. Okay. That is like the absolute shortcut to massive success. Number 4, feedback loops and volume. How do you actually get better? Well, volume times feedback loop equals skill development. Okay. I'm going to say that again. Volume times feedback loop equals skill development. This means experience. Okay. Not just posting content, not just making calls, not just sending emails, but reviewing them. Having a mastery level skill set will absolutely print you 7 figures a year, year in and year out. But what are you doing to actually improve it? Most agents think they're great on the phone or they think they're great in person, but what are you doing as an agent to actually improve your skill set and to keep that sword sharp? If you look at your last 10 closes last year, what do they have in common? Just do more of that. Look at those 10 closes and figure out where do they come from and how could you get more people just like those people? If you look at your bottom 5 deals, what killed those deals? Do less of that. Like maybe cut that lead source that brought in those bottom feeding price points or the clients that were just a pain in the ass to work with. So this is the process. It's not motivation. It's not discipline. It's just data-driven repetition. When you absolutely drive home the reps, you get the experience, you get a lot faster. Okay. As you look at these past sales, look at the lead source. What was the time from lead inception to met to close? You want to analyze all of this, but you want to ask yourself, how can you find attract and market to more of these same people? So be patient with the outputs and be impatient with the inputs. Let's translate this into real estate for just a minute. Inputs is things like actions. Okay. Efforts, calling, texting, follow-ups, client events. The outputs is closed deals. So many agents get focused and they're like dead set on the outputs. They're just only thinking about the closed deals. And I get that. That's when you get paid. That's when you get the check, which is what you're ultimately doing this for. However, you don't really control when deals close. What you do control is all the effort that gets you more closed deals. So I want you laser focused on those actions, those inputs that are going to trigger more deals. And if you don't know what those are, you can take the time and really think through your business. I just gave you a bunch of them though. Calling, texting, follow-ups, client events. Those are easy ones to do. That gets me to number 5. Your friends are either helping or they are hurting your goals. I call this your inner circle, and it matters massively. Ask this question for every person in your life. Does having them here make me more or less likely to hit my goals? But the group really determines the ceiling of the person that's in there. Okay. So whoever you spend your time with the most is who you're going to compare yourself to and who you're ultimately going to become. If you're the only rich guy in the whole group, that's a really big problem for you. You're the smartest person in the room. You're not going to be able to grow and get bigger and more successful in that. Okay. So you need to have better people than you in your friendship circle and not just be the lone wolf that's out there winning in body and business and everywhere else. Okay. But this is like that really lonely chapter in entrepreneurship that a lot of people don't realize. Okay. This is where you're going to go alone a lot of the time. You're going to have to abandon some friendships that are not helping you get to where you want to be. You got to evaluate these friendships and say, are these people really going to help me get to where I want to go? Or are they holding me back? If they're not going where you want to go, and if they don't share those same values and drive that you have, that is a friend that is holding you back. Okay. And it can get very lonely, but that's just the reality of it. But the question I want you to ask yourself is, are you willing to be completely alone if that is what it takes to eliminate toxic relationships that don't elevate you from your inner circle? I call this firing your friend. You've outgrown them. Your goals will outlast these relationships. Bet on your goals, not on the friendships. But when you find real friends, the friends that push you to level up, that will change the game. I promise you, it's going to make you so much better. It becomes the norm of the group. Okay. It is the operating standard within that friendship circle. It took me until my mid 30s to find these people. It was very lonely in my 20s and my early 30s where I had no relationships with people because they were not making me better. It gets me number 6. Sleep and fitness affect every single thing that you do. So I want you to reframe and think of these instead of working out, okay, and sleeping. And I want you to rethink of it as longevity and energy, because that's really what it is. Okay. Sleeping 4 to 5 hours hours a week was my default for years. It was like a badge of honor I had, but it will take years off your life. It's terrible for you. And you're going to walk around in this brain fog state all the time because you're absolutely exhausted. So I recommend having an evening routine. The morning is truly one the night before. This includes things like having red light glasses, having a bedtime alarm telling me what time I'm going to go to bed, not just a wake up alarm telling me what time to get up, but what time do I need to be asleep by? And then walk before bed. I like to get a 10-minute walk in. I like to have my last meal 1 to 2 hours before I go to sleep. And then I create the right sleep environment for me. This includes things like a sleep mask, wax earplugs, white noise machine, cooling sheets. And of course, I take sleep supplements. I take the Delta sleep inducing peptide, works really well. You can take that 5 days on, 2 days off. You can take glycine powder. You can take slow release melatonin. These all work really, really well. I'm not recommending that you take the supplements. I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you what I do and what's worked well for me. I've taken and tried lots of different sleep supplements. I track my data very closely. If it doesn't move the needle on my sleep, specifically my REM sleep and my deep sleep, I cut that supplement out almost immediately. I only take the stuff that actually works, okay? I use a Whoop. You can see on my wrist right there. And the thing I love about the Whoop is it can be set to wake you up when you hit 100% of your sleep need within a window of time. So to give you an example, mine is set to wake me up between 4:15 and 5:15 in the morning when I've hit 100% of my sleep need. So it's proactively managing my sleep debt and making sure I'm not getting into the hole on sleep. What you don't want to do is you don't want to bank sleep during the week and then roll into the weekend and then sleep for like 10 or 11 hours. Totally messes up your circadian rhythm. It's going to make you feel terrible and really affect your energy. Okay. But when you master your sleep, this really sets you up for energy. It's going to last all day. I promise you. It's a game changer. It took me a long time to figure this one out. A lot of people think it's weird that I go to bed at like 8 p.m., but I think these people are also weird for not being ruthlessly committed to hitting their goals. I want to touch on alcohol for just a second. Alcohol is the most expensive mistake you likely have in your life right now. It's affecting your sleep. Cost is high. It's going to give you sluggish mornings, brain fog, feeling suboptimal for multiple days. The older you get, the worse this gets. If you're in your 30s, let me tell you that when you get to 40, it gets a lot worse. My wife, Rachel, and I used to drink all the time. Like, I'm not here to judge anyone that drinks. I'm just telling you what has worked for us and what hasn't. We loved it. We had a great time, especially in our 20s. But at some point, we just took stock where we're at on this. We had to ask ourselves the hard question is, what is this really adding for our life? The reality is that alcohol adds absolutely nothing to our life, but it costs us a lot. And that cost is something we're not comfortable with. And that cost really is energy and focus. And that's a bill that we're not prepared to pay. So we cut it out, and you got to do what's right for you. But I recommend that you at least try cutting it out as well, or limiting it in some way, shape, or form. That gets me to number 7. Hiring the right coaches has been my cheat code. I'm very particular about who I hire to coach me, but they have to have been where I want to go, or they have to have taken multiple people to that place. I'll give you an example. My bodybuilding coach has not become a professional bodybuilder, but he's taken like 150 people to the professional level. So he's kind of like that Bill Belichick guy. Like, he is the guy that has not personally done it, but he's coached tons of other people to do it. I want the person that's either done that or that has done it themselves. Okay. But if you get the right coach, and it's going to help you get from point A to point B so much faster, make less mistakes, and make so much more money. Some of the coaches that I personally have, I'm just going to tell you straight up, I have a diet and supplement coach. This is my main bodybuilding coach. It's AJ Sims, world-renowned coach. He's taken guys all the way to the Olympia stage, does my diet, my supplements, check-ins every single week, preps me for shows, does all the planning, so I don't have to think about anything. I'm outsourcing the thinking and all the experience to AJ. I have a training coach. He writes my training programs. It's Mike Condell. He's an IFBB pro, customizes everything from my training to my goals and physique. I have to send him my top sets from my workouts. Those are videos showing that final set, and he reviews them every single week to make sure the intensity is there, the form is correct, all that stuff. I have a wealth coach. This guy coaches me on actively trading my investment portfolio and overall financial empire growth. Super important. I have a business coach. It's Craig Ballantyne. He's a famous author and coach. He's written The Perfect Day Formula. Recommend checking that book out. But Craig helps my wife and I with our overall strategy for all of our businesses. He helps us tie it all together. We have an Instagram coach that runs our Instagrams and our Reels. She's grown our Instagram accounts like 100x over the last year. It's been fantastic. And we outsource all of the thinking and the experience to her for that. We have a YouTube coach. They develop our strategy for YouTube channels. And they work with our media team to implement and execute all of our videos and make sure that they're fully optimized, to make sure that we're looking at the analytics and we're continually making the videos better. Each of these coaches have had an absolutely insane return on investment for the money I have given them. I'm telling you, like, don't be cheap when it comes to hiring coaches. Be very, very careful about who you hire to take their advice. But once you hire that person, go all in and be willing to pay a lot to have that experience side by side with you. These are people I have learned a tremendous amount from. And the years in business where I've had the most explosive growth is where I've had the best coaches. Okay. It really, truly is the best return on investment I have ever had. So if you're a real estate agent and you're in your 30s and you're watching this, you already have done more than you think. You've got the reps, you've got the losses, you have the hard-earned pattern recognition that no 22-year-old can buy. Hopefully you've taken the time to do the reflection and learn from those mistakes that we've talked about. The question is, are you going to keep using it or are you going to keep trading it for comfort? Okay. So if you want to actually build around that experience to scale your production, to add agents to your team, or to plug into a brokerage that's built for people who are serious, we've got courses that agents can take. We've got a 58 course masterclass on listing and buyer representation. It is our whole playbook on how to sell 1,500 homes. We've sold almost $1 billion in real estate at this point. It's all of our systems and processes. So you can buy that. There's a link down below. We also got a partnership with REAL Brokerage. We sponsor real agents all across the country that come over and move their business to Real. And that's one of the ways you can get us to mentor you directly. But this is a brokerage that's really awesome that we've been at since 2021 and that's been game changing for us. We came over when Real had 2,500 agents. We now got 25,000 agents. It's been awesome to watch the growth. All those links are down below. Of course, like, share, subscribe this video. I drop a new video every week that we don't miss a single one.